Chapter 7-1. National accounts. Almost all countries calculate a set of numbers known as the national income and product accounts. The national income and product accounts, or national accounts, keep track of the flow of money between different parts of the economy. Let's look at these different parts in this model, in this circular flow model that we have. Here we're measuring the flow of money through the economy. There are four players in this economy. There's the government, there's the household, there's the firms, and then there's the rest of the world. There are three different markets that these different players will interact. There's the factor market, where land, labor, capital is bought and sold by the household to the firms. And then there's the market for goods and services. This is a market that you're familiar with. Then there's the financial markets, where stocks and bonds are bought and sold. And then there's the rest of the world. Now, the household earns an income via the factor market from wages for their labor, interest on the bonds that they own, dividend on stocks that they own, and rent on the land that they own. Let's look at that in our diagram here. So here's the household. They're collecting wages for their labor. They're collecting profit in the form of dividends from the firms. They're collecting interest for loaning out money for money that they loaned out to the firm. And they're collecting rent on the land that they own and which they have let the firm use. So this is their income. That's the flow of income or money coming into the household. Now, let's review those. Income received by households are wages for labor, rent for land, interest for financial capital, and profit for physical capital. Please note the difference between these two. Financial capital collects interest. Profit is collected on the physical capital. Also, the household receives other form of income from the government. They receive government transfer payments. These are payments for Social Security payments, welfare payments, or if you were in the military, veterans benefit. This is money that's given to various households without receiving any goods or services in return. Putting all this household income together and subtracting from that the taxes is called the disposable income. Now, the disposable income is either spent as consumer spending or goes into something called private saving. Let's look at our diagram again. So here's our household. They're collecting wages, rent, interest, profit. They are collecting government transfer payments from the government. And we subtract from that the taxes that they pay out to the government, and that gives us our disposable income. Now, the disposable income can go either into consumption or consumer spending, where they buy stuff in the market for goods and services, or they can save that money by putting it in the financial market. So there are two options. So the disposable income, again, is the income from wages, rent, interest, profit. Adding to that government spending, that gives us their income, and then subtracting from that taxes, which gives us our disposable income, which then they can decide, spend this way or save this way. And I want to just make sure that you understand that we are measuring flows here. And flows is a movement. It's not a stock. So the store of wealth is a stock concept. So when you save money or you pile money or hoard money, that's a stock concept. Just another rule that we need to think about as we go through this model is that the total sum of flows of money out of any box, any of these boxes, must equal to the sum of the money that's coming into that box. Via the financial market, private savings is channeled to firms for investment spending. So the household saving, private saving, goes into the financial market, as you remember. So the part that they did not spend of their disposable income goes into the financial market. The financial market loans or issues stocks to the firms, to the businesses. And the businesses take that fund and spend it as investment spending in the goods and services market. Investment spending is basically spending on productive physical capital and changes to inventory. Inventories are seen as contributing to future sales of the firm. So spending on additional inventory, when your inventory grows, adds to investment spending, and when your inventories shrink, that's a fall in investment spending, because before they can sell it to you, they have to buy it themselves. Government purchases of goods and services is paid for by tax receipt as well as by government borrowing. Remember that rule. What comes out of the box must equal how much goes into it. So here's the government. They go out also. They spend. They buy goods and services, the markets for goods and services. They do that by collecting taxes from the household or borrowing the money from the financial markets. And the next player in this market is the foreigners. So when they buy goods and services produced by your economy, they generate an inflow of fund into the country from the rest of the world. So this is the export. And imports, where you buy or material goods and services produced in other countries, leads to an outflow of funds to the rest of the world. Foreigners also can buy stocks and bonds in the financial U.S. market, which would be an inflow. Let's look at that. So when all these people are buying stuff in goods, the market for goods and services, the export from the rest of the world, the funds are flowing into our economy. And when we buy stuff from foreigners, it's our funds flowing out of the economy. So imports are a net drain on the flow of funds. But then the rest of the world can also import money or into the economy by buying in the financial market. So that could be a flow of funds back in. And remember, flows out of any box must equal goes into it. So when you buy an import, that's a flow of funds out. And lending by a foreigner is a flow of fund back into to this economy. Purchases of assets in U.S. is a flow of funds in. We cannot have funds constantly flowing out. They must find their way back into the system, and the way they do that is by purchases of assets, financial assets. So putting all those components together, we come up with this formula right here for what is the GDP. The C stands for consumer spending. I stands for investment or business spending. G stands for government spending. The X stands for foreigners spending on your goods and services or export. Import is you spending money on foreign made goods, which is an import. Putting all those together, you come up with this formula. Let's put that in this diagram. So here's the consumer spending going into this markets for goods and services, the final goods and services. Here's the government spending going into this market for goods and services. Here's investment spending going into the goods and services. Here's foreign spending going into goods and services or exports. And subtracting from that, there's this little flow out here. That's for imports. That's why imports will add a negative in front of it, if you remember that formula. And what's left over in this box has to flow out to the firm. And that's our gross domestic product. So basically we're measuring the flow through this pipeline here to come up with this number called the gross domestic product. You think about it, gross domestic product or GDP is basically measuring the value of all final goods and services produced in the economy.